Hi everyone, my name is Rosalie P. Maniago and I will be your teacher in the 21st century literature from the Philippines and the world. Before we continue, I would like to ask you a question. Are you ready to learn something new today? Alright, very good. Now sit back and enjoy watching this video as we continue our lesson for today. After going through this module, you are expected to do three things. Number one is to identify the geographic, linguistic, and ethnic dimension of the Philippine literary history from pre-colonial to contemporary and representative texts from the regions. Number two, write a close analysis and critical interpretation of literary texts. And number three, show a sense of adaptability of the Philippine literary history. We can proceed to our first topic for this semester. Again, welcome to my class. Okay, the first one is the pre-Spanish literature. Our forefathers already had their literature which reflected in their customs and tradition. They had their alphabet even before they had colonized. The Spanish friars burned their alphabet in the belief that they were works of the devil or were written in materials that quickly furnished, like the barks of trees, dry leaves, and bamboo cylinders, which would have remained firm even if efforts were made to preserve them. Our unique geographic location is the reason why we are rich. Let us now proceed with Lesson 1. Geographic, linguistic, and ethnic dimension of the Philippine literary history from pre-colonial to contemporary. Before we proceed, let me ask you a question. What do you know about the different literary periods in the Philippine literature? Okay, very good. Again, another question is, what are the essential elements of the literary pieces under the different period of literature? Okay, very good. So let us now proceed with the pre-Spanish literature. It is characterized by, number one is the folk tale. So these are made up of stories about life, adventure, love, horror, and humor where one can derive lessons. Example of this is The Sun and the Moon. The Sun and the Moon is an African folk tale tells about why the sun and the moon live in the sky. The second pre-Spanish literature characteristics is that thing called the epic age. Epics are long narrative poems in which a series of heroic achievements or events, usually of a hero, are dealt with a length. For example is the Ibong Adarna. Ibong Adarna was very famous during the 16th century. It talks about the eponymous magical bird. The third characteristic of pre-Spanish literature is the folk songs. These are one of the oldest forms of Philippine literature that emerged in the pre-Spanish period. These songs mirrors the early forms of culture. Many of these have 12 syllables. Examples are the kundiman. Kundiman is the traditional Filipino love song, as well as the kumintang or tagumpay, known for the Philippine music and dance. These are also music for love song, as well as the ang dait or ang himno, known as the awit ng papuri, luwalhati, and kaligayahan sa Diyos. The Uyayi or Hele or the Lullaby, Diana, and the Suliraning and Talindaw. Okay, before we continue, do you have any question? Okay, very good. Now let us proceed with the understanding literary history. Literature in this period may be classified as religious prose and poetry and secular prose and poetry. First characterization is the Spanish influences on the Philippine literature. So So what are the things that the Spaniards influenced us as Filipinos? The first is the Filipino alphabet. Filipino alphabet is known as the Alibata. During this period, it was replaced by the Roman alphabet. Also, aside from changing the alphabet or replacing the alphabet from Alibata to Roman alphabet, also the teaching of the Christian doctrine became the basis of different religious practices. They used the Christian doctrine as the guideline on implementing different religious practices during this period. European legends and traditions brought here became assimilated in our songs, corridos, and moro-moros. Next is the folk songs. It manifests the artistic feelings of Filipinos and shows their innate appreciation for and love of beauty. Examples of folk songs are Leron Leron Sinta, Pamulinawin, Dandansoy, and Sarong Bangi, as well as the Ating Kukong Singsing. So these songs are examples of Filipino folk song wherein the writers or singers tend to express their feelings through different form of song. Recreational plays. There were many recreational plays performed by Filipinos during the Spanish time. Almost all of them were in a poetic form such as senaculo, panunuluyan, salubong, and sarsuela. So this gathering or recreational plays usually happen during the Holy Week. The senaculo, the panunuluyan, the salubong during the dawn of Easter Sunday, and the sarsuela. The period of enlightenment. In 19th century, Filipino intellectuals educated in Europe called Ilustrados began to write about the hinge of colonization. So during this time, Filipino writers who studied in Europe tend to write different things about colonization in order to enlighten the mind of every Filipinos during that time. And another thing is the formation of different propaganda movement. This movement was spearheaded mostly by the intellectual middle class like Jose Rizal, Marcelo del Pilar, Graciano Lopez Haina, Antonio Luna, Mariano Ponce, Sep Panganiban, and Pedro Paterno. So these young people tend to write during this time to enlighten people about colonization. Some of Jose Rizal's writings are Dinoli mi Tangere, Mi Ultimo Adios, Sobre la Indulgencia de los Filipinos, and Pilipinas dentro de 100 años. On the other hand, some of Del Pilar's writings are Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa, Love of Country, Kaingat Kayo, Be Careful, and Dasalan at Toksohan, Prayers and Joke. Moreover, some of the HEHMHS writings are Ang Fray Batod, La Hija del Fraile or the Child of Friar, Everything is Humbug, Everything is Myrnaw sa Pilipino, and Talumpating Paggunita kay Columbus, an oration to commemorate Columbus. The American Regime, 1898 to 1944. Linguistically, Americans influenced Filipino writers to write using English language. Jose Garciabilla became famous for his free verse during this time. During this period, it is characterized as the language used in writing were Spanish and Tagalog, and the dialects of the different regions. But the writers in Tagalog continued in their lamentations of the conditions of the country and their attempts to arouse love of one's native tongue. And the writers in English imitated the themes and methods of the Americans. During these times, the American influences Filipinos to write their piece or masterpiece in English language. And one of the famous writer during this time is Jose Garcia Villa. The Japanese period during the 1941 and 1945. Philippine literature was interrupted in its development when another foreign country, Japan, conquered Philippines between 1941 to 1945. Philippine literature in English became a halt. This led to all newspapers not to be circulated in the community except for Tribune and Philippine Review. Filipino poetry during this period, the common theme of most poems during the Japanese occupation was the nationalism, country, love, and life in the various faith, religion, and the arts. During this time, it forms different types of poem, the three types of poem, which are, number one is the haiku. Haiku is known as a poem of free verse that the Japanese like. It was made up of 7 syllables divided into 3 lines. The second one is tanaga. Like the haiku, is short, but it had measure and rhyme. And the third one is the karaniwang anyo or the usual form, known as also as the free verse. Philippine literature in English, 1941 to 1945. Because of the strict prohibitions imposed by the Japanese in the writing and publishing of works in English, Philippine literature in English experienced a dark period. For the first 20 years, many books were published both in Filipino and in English. In the new Filipino literature, Philippine literature in Tagalog was revived during this period. Most themes in the writings dealt with Japanese brutalities, the poverty of life under the Japanese government, and the brave guerrilla exploit. The period of activism. According to Casiano Pineda, known as the youth activist in 1970 to 1972, was due to domestic and worldwide causes. Because of the ills of society, the youth moved to seek new reforms. The literary revolution. The youth became vocal with their sentiments. They demanded a change in the government. It was manifested in the bloody demonstration and the sidewalk expression and also in the literature. So youths during this period are being vocal with what they felt, what they want to happen in their society. They tend to write things in order to show their feelings to the government because they are seeking for a reform. Period of the new society. News on economic progress, discipline, culture, tourism, and the like were bigboard more than the sensationalized reporting of killings, rape, and robberies. Filipinos before were hooked in reading magazines and economics. During this period, most of the Filipino loves to read magazines and comics. And normally the use of news and or magazines are more bigboard on broadcasting the economic progress, discipline, and culture. During the period of the Third Republic, after 10 years of military rule and some changes in the life of Filipino, which started under the new society, Martial rule was the last lifted on January 2, 1981. The Philippines became a new nation, and this, former President Marcos called the New Republic of the Philippines. Poems during this period of the Third Republic were romantic and revolutionary. Many Filipino songs dealt with the themes that were true to life, like those of grief, poverty, aspirations for freedom, love of God and country, and fellow men. During this time, Filipino authors or writers found different flavor on writings. They do not just write things about the revolutionary, they also wrote things about grief, poverty, aspirations, and freedom. Moreover, during the post-EDSA I revolution in 1986 to 1995, history took another twist. Once more, the Filipino regained their independence, which they lost 20 years ago. In 4 days from February 21 to 25, 1986, the so-called people power or lakas ng bayan prevailed. In the short span of existence of the real Republic of the Philippines, several changes already became evident. It was noticed in the new Filipino songs, newspapers, speeches, and even in the television programs. The now corny newspapers that enjoyed an overnight increase in circulations were the Inquiry, Malaya, and the Filipinos or the People's Journal. During the EDSA I revolution, post-EDSA I revolution, they found another way to publish their works. They used not only the newspaper but also the television. Okay, so far do you have any question? If you have question, just use the comment box below. Now, let us proceed with the 21st century period. Before we go through, let us have your activity number 1 entitled Who's Who. On your module on page 10, kindly do the activity number 1 entitled Who's Who on your yellow paper. Use the title to easily identify the activity. So direction, identify the author of the following literary pieces written by the illustrados. Write the letter of your correct answers. So you are going to write only the letter of the correct answer on your yellow paper. That will be for activity number 1. Assessment number 1 entitled Characterize Me. It says here that complete the table below by writing the characteristics of the following literature during the pre-Spanish period. We discussed earlier the different characterization of pre-Spanish period, which are the legends, the folk tales, the epic age, and the folk songs. You are going to characterize each of these period during the pre-Spanish time. Activity number 2 entitled Tinker's View. So given below is a sample of the Filipino folktale in the pre-Spanish period. Answer the questions follow. So kindly open your module on page 11, activity 2, lower part. So you are going to answer the questions after reading the folktales entitled The Sun and the Moon. You're going to answer the activity or the question number 1, 2, and 3 on your yellow paper. Do not forget to add the title of each activity as you answer your modules. Next is the assessment number 2 entitled Closer Look. So write 3 words that will highlight the message of the excerpt from one of the most famous literary pieces during the Spanish time, Passion. What you are going to do is to read the message inside this box and write 3 words that highlight the message that these texts are trying to include or to give us. Assessment number 3, saying a song. Directions. One of the songs in the first EDSA 1 era is the song Ang Bayan Ko. Analyze and interpret the emotions of Filipino situation of the country found in each paragraph. So you are going to analyze what are the emotions, the feelings of every Filipino during the first EDSA 1 using this song entitled Ang Bayan Ko. And task number 1, as a grade 12 Filipino learner, in what way you can show a sense of adaptability to diverse Philippines literary history? State your answer in a 3-paragraph essay. So that is all for today. Kindly add or write the title of each activity so that we can easily identify your task or your work. Use yellow paper in answering every question. If you have any question, you can PM me through FB chat, or you can just comment down below and I will reply later on. So that's all for now. Good luck to your tasks, your activities. Enjoy learning. Goodbye.